The woman my husband cherishes is actually my best friend. By the time I found out, we had already been married for 10 years. Flowers, fine wine, cake, balloons. Jiang Chi held my hand affectionately as he spoke tenderly about the 10 years we had spent together. From the day we got married, I vowed that I would treat Ting well for the rest of my life. Clap, 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 clap. The applause from family and friends was continuous. A few of the more emotional ones even began discreetly wiping away tears with tissues. A handsome man loving his ordinary wife as faithfully as he did on day one, year after year, who wouldn't look at them and believe in true love. If I hadn't discovered Jiang Chi's secret today, I would have believed it too. It's so enviable. Ting is truly blessed, my best friend said, wiping the corner of her eye while gazing at us with admiration. You're quite blessed yourself. As soon as my words fell, the room fell completely silent. 2 years ago, my best friend's husband went bankrupt and left alone to seek opportunities on a fishing boat in Malaysia. He'd been seeking opportunities for over 2 years now, and in all that time, he hadn't even sent her a single salted fish. The bank repossessed their house, forcing her to move back to her parents' home with her child. To say she was blessed sounded more like sarcasm than anything else. For a moment, the atmosphere grew awkward. My best friend's tears hovered on the brink of falling, making her the very picture of a pitiful, delicate soul. Ting is drunk. It's all a misunderstanding, Jiang Chi said, smoothing things over while nudging me with his hand. That's right. I'm drunk. I thought it was still a few years ago. My mistake, I said with a smile, pushing Jiang Chi away and raising my glass to my best friend. It might have looked like an apology, but everyone present was savvy enough to hear the sarcasm in my words. After saying this, I turned and walked away, pretending not to see the embarrassment on my best friend's face. If this had been over a decade ago, the men at the next table might have rushed over to play the hero and save the damsel in distress. After all, a few of them had even asked me to pass love letters to her back in our school days. What a pity. There are no ifs in life. Most of the boys who once sent love letters to the class beauty are now married with children, their wives sitting beside them. No matter how much they might sympathize, they couldn't publicly stand up for another woman. Even a fool would understand this, but Jiang Chi didn't. He hovered around my best friend like an eager lapdog, as if afraid no one would notice his little crush. Tsk. A husband circling another woman at his own 10th anniversary party. How thrilling! I didn't need to turn around to know it was Fang Chubai. That annoying, slick tone of his, I'd recognize it even if he were burned to ashes. Tsk. Only slightly more thrilling than running into a middle-aged, greasy, single old man, I suppose. I turned around, my face already wearing a professional fake smile, still as vicious as ever. Likewise, for some reason, I thought I caught a hint of nostalgia on Fang Qiabai's annoying face. It must have been my imagination. With a hollow smile, I clinked glasses with Fang Qiabai and moved onto another table. Ting, we need to talk. Once the wine had flowed, the feast concluded, and the guests seen off, Jiang Chi approached, still supporting my sobbing best friend. I knew these two would stir up trouble. Talk then. I casually pulled out a chair and sat down. You must apologize to Su Wen, he declared with righteous indignation, paired with the delicate little white flower beside him, who had cried throughout the entire party without her makeup smudging. Anyone who didn't know better would think I'd committed some heinous crime. What if I refused to apologize? I was almost amused by anger. How had I never noticed Jiang Chi was so brave before? Jiang Chi clearly hadn't expected me, usually so compliant, to talk back. Well, are you going to divorce me? Shall we go now? Tired of wasting words on this pair, I went straight for the jugular. My words left both Jiang Chi and Su Wen stunned. Ting, don't be upset. There must be some misunderstanding between you and Jiang Chi. You two should talk it out properly. I'll get going now. Suddenly, the delicate little white flower's back didn't hurt anymore. Her legs weren't weak, and she no longer needed support. She grabbed her bag and left. Watching her nimble figure, I estimated she could probably compete in a race-walking event without any issues. Su Wen left, leaving Jiang Chi and me staring at each other. Maybe you should go see her off. Jiang Chi took a deep breath, regaining the refined demeanor I used to be familiar with. Ting, Su Wen has been our good friend for over 10 years. You shouldn't have treated her like that. It's too offensive. The more I used to adore Jiang Chi's gentle and cultured manner, the more I now detested it. So what if I offend her? What can she do about it? Call her dead dodging husband back from abroad to hit me? Ting, Sure enough, merely mentioning Su Wen's husband was enough to break Jiang Chi's composure. What? Did I say something wrong? I stared into Jiang Chi's eyes until he began to look away. All right. You know how much I was looking forward to our 10th anniversary. Instead of staying home to deal with her dead issues, Su Wen had to come here and spoil the mood. Can you blame me for being angry? I grabbed Jiang Chi's hand and gave it a shake. Jiang Chi's attitude visibly softened. She didn't really say anything. He clasped my hand in return. It's not easy for her, raising a child alone. I flung his hand away. Feeling sorry for her? Why don't you go help her then? That's not what I meant. Where did you even get that idea? Jiang Chi rubbed his hands together awkwardly. Although the guests had left, many service staff were still around. Our argument had drawn their frequent glances. I had no desire to be stared at alongside Jiang Chi, so I left him alone to settle the bill and headed home by myself. The first thing I did when I got home was clean up the pile of torn, shredded paper on the bed. Chen Ting, had never felt such profound humiliation in my over 30 years of life. My best friend and my beloved husband had joined forces to make a fool out of me, deceiving me for a full decade. I gathered the torn scraps from the bed. The fragmented pages were filled with Jiang Chi's love for Su Wen. Jiang Chi had loved Su Wen for 17 years. That was 7 years longer than our marriage. From their first meeting to their deep understanding of each other, Jiang Chi's diary repeatedly reminisced about his love story with Su Wen. Beautiful, melancholic, and full of longing. In Jiang Chi's diary, Su Wen was the girl like a lilac flower. But alas, the lilac was too beautiful, and an earthenware pot like Jiang Chi couldn't sustain her. Though the earthenware pot was deeply reluctant, the lilac was eventually transplanted into an exquisite porcelain pot. The earthenware pot was heartbroken, filled with longing. So, the kind lilac introduced her good friend, the dandelion, to the pot. The earthenware pot was deeply moved and decided to marry the dandelion, vowing to bury his love for the lilac deep in his heart. Yes, I was that clueless, foolish dandelion. The first half of the diary ended on our wedding day. Jiang Chi wrote, I no longer have the right to love the lilac. Perhaps the dandelion is the flower that belongs to me. If the first half of the diary filled me with rage, the second half made me sick. Perhaps the mundane realities of married life, firewood, rice, oil, salt had worn down the romantic edges of Jiang Chi's literary soul. For about 6 or 7 years after our marriage, Jiang Chi didn't write in his diary. Until 3 years ago. That's right, when Su Wen's husband went bankrupt. The exquisite porcelain pot had cracked, and the earthenware pot felt it had a chance again. Upon learning the news of Su Wen's husband's bankruptcy, Jiang Chi first grieved for his white moonlight's fate, followed by wild, secret joy. Especially after Su Wen's husband went abroad, Jiang Chi was practically over the moon, almost ready to set off firecrackers in celebration. During that period, Jiang Chi often used overtime as an excuse. In reality, he was visiting Su Wen with gifts. Su Wen, exhausted by debt collectors at the time, was happy to have someone help. So, every time collectors came, she would call Jiang Chi. The two maintained an ambiguous, unclear relationship this way. If it had only been that, I might have been furious, but I wouldn't have lost my composure. What I truly couldn't bear happened on the 10th of last month. That day was my father's 60th birthday, and also, according to Jiang Chi's diary, the happiest moment of his life. A 60th birthday is a major milestone. My whole family took it very seriously. To celebrate my father's birthday properly, I had told Jiang Chi a month in advance that he absolutely must be there on time. Jiang Chi naturally agreed without hesitation. But on the day of the birthday banquet, from start to finish, Jiang Chi was nowhere to be seen. Even relatives from my hometown had taken the train to attend, yet my own husband was absent. You can imagine how angry my father was. I could only frantically call Jiang Chi while making up excuses for him. When we got home that night, I naturally had a huge fight with Jiang Chi. I was screaming and shouting, but Jiang Chi wasn't angry at all. He accepted all my scolding and hitting, just seemed completely distracted. Later, after reading Jiang Chi's diary, I learned the truth. That day, I had arrived early to set up the banquet. Jiang Chi was running late but was on his way. Just as he reached the entrance, he received a call from Su Wen saying the debt collectors were back. On one side, his father-in-law's birthday banquet. On the other, a plea for help from his white moonlight. Jiang Chi didn't hesitate. He turned around and went straight to Su Wen's house. Perhaps seeing they couldn't get the money, the debt collection agency had sent a tougher character this time. I never had the chance to meet this tough character. From Jiang Chi's diary, I gathered he was a burly, large man. Apparently, as soon as he entered, he slammed a knife into the table, terrifying Su Wen and her family. With Jiang Chi's skinny, frail frame, he naturally couldn't confront this brute head-on. But he couldn't bear to disappoint his white moonlight either. In a moment of hot-headedness, he promised to help Su Wen repay the debt to persuade the thug to leave. The thug was tough, not stupid. He wouldn't just believe empty promises. Before leaving, he took all of Jiang Chi's cash and forced him to sign an agreement. Every adult knows why Jiang Chi agreed to help Su Wen with her debt. Su Wen was no exception. To firmly tie down this gullible benefactor, she took the initiative to ask Jiang Chi to stay. Then, everything that should have happened and shouldn't have happened did. Jiang Chi wrote in his diary, "This was the happiest day of my life." Reading that line, I was so angry my fists clenched. "You bastard, Jiang Chi." What I want to say probably wouldn't pass the censors. If you think infidelity was the limit of Jiang Chi's depravity, you'd be wrong. The moral bottom line of this despicable pair is far lower than you can imagine. As mentioned, Jiang Chi promised to help Su Wen repay the debt. But for Jiang Chi, who had to rely on his wife's family even for the marital home, this was undoubtedly a huge sum. Although Jiang Chi hadn't done poorly these years and had saved up a considerable amount, it was far from enough to cover the debt. Moreover, our savings had always been in a joint account. If Jiang Chi moved a small amount, it might go unnoticed, but a large withdrawal would surely alert me. Some might think, why not just get a divorce? Of course not. The house we live in now is my premarital property. Even if we divorced, Jiang Chi wouldn't get a share. Furthermore, an old property under my parents' name was included in an old city redevelopment plan. My parents planned to use the compensation to buy us a house in a good school district. Jiang Chi's scheme was well calculated. Once the compensation money arrived, sell the current house and buy the school district house. That way, the premarital property would be transformed into joint marital property. Jiang Chi told Su Wen about his plan. Su Wen initially said it wasn't right, but quickly followed up with an even more malicious scheme. They planned to wait until the new house was secured, then find a way to frame me for adultery. This way, not only could they get more money, but they could also make everyone believe I was the one at fault for the divorce. Wen is truly a kind, good girl. I must protect her. Jiang Chi wrote in his diary, "Well, I'll be damned. That's called kind? Jiang Chi must be blind too, right?" Now that I knew the truth, there was naturally no way I could continue living with Jiang Chi. But divorcing him now would be letting them off too easily. I had to find a way to get back at this despicable pair. However, the immediate task was to deal with the torn-up diary. It wasn't time to confront Jiang Chi openly yet. By the time I finished collecting all the fragments, 2 hours had passed. Just then, my phone suddenly lit up. Ding dong! A message from Jiang Chi. Ting ting. Something urgent came up at work. I need to go to the office. Don't wait up for me. Get some rest early. Huh. I didn't even need to investigate to know Jiang Chi was definitely with Su Wen right now. Fine. That suited my plans perfectly. First, I carefully hid the diary fragments. These were evidence for any future legal proceedings against Jiang Chi. Next, I had someone move the desk where Jiang Chi used to hide his diary to my parents' house. That desk had always been locked. It locked away Jiang Chi's youth untouched for years. Lately, with his white moonlight rekindling his second spring, he'd started writing in it frequently again. If he hadn't always secretly written in it in the study and kept it locked away from me, I wouldn't have been curious about what was inside. If he hadn't been opening it so frequently, he wouldn't have forgotten to relock it that day, allowing me to open it. There was no such thing as coincidence. Everything had been destined from the day he first betrayed me. Finally, I called and ordered a luxurious new office desk. Everything was ready. Now, I just waited for Jiang Chi. The next day, Jiang Chi returned looking utterly exhausted, clearly drained by his pleasures. Just as he was about to head to the bedroom to rest, I sidled up to him mysteriously, saying I had a surprise for him. Before he could react, I pulled open the study door, proudly showcasing the brand new desk from every angle. Happy? This is our 10th anniversary gift. I even got you a massage chair to go with it. It's so comfortable. After saying this, worried my presentation wasn't comprehensive enough, I even turned on the massage chair remote. Buzz! Chen Ting! Where's the old desk? Over the humming of the massage chair, Jiang Chi's face rapidly darkened. The old desk? I gave it to my dad. You know he's been obsessed with calligraphy lately and needed a wooden desk, I said with a smile. How could you just? Without even telling me. I had important documents in that desk. You get it back right now. Jiang Chi was so angry he was stumbling over his words. Standing next to him, I could clearly see his clenched fists. Oh ho. Getting angry. Are we? These so-called important documents, could they be that diary and Su Wen's IOU? Wasn't she the love of his life? Why would she need to give him an IOU? I have to say, they're quite creative. Even the IOU was pink, with a lipstick kiss on it. Why are you shouting? That desk was locked. Who could steal your documents? How about you give me the key, and I'll fetch your files tomorrow? I was secretly laughing inside, but my face wore an aggrieved expression, the very picture of a devoted wife scolded for preparing a surprise for her husband. I was betting he wouldn't dare give me the key. After all, the contents of that drawer couldn't see the light of day. Or you could go get them yourself. Save me the trip. After saying that, I curled up pitifully in the massage chair. Expensive chairs really are comfortable. This one even had a heating function. I was now in full I don't care mode. If he scolded me, I'd cry. After all, I wasn't the one in a hurry. Seeing I wasn't cooperating, Jiang Chi turned and stomped out to call my dad. Bang! A few minutes later, the sound of a slamming door came from outside the study. Through the crack in the door, I saw Jiang Chi storm into the bedroom and slam the door shut. No need to ask. He must have gotten nowhere with my dad. My dad was still holding a grudge about Jiang Chi missing the birthday banquet, and I had given him a heads up. It would have been strange if Jiang Chi had succeeded. In short, no matter what Jiang Chi said, my dad would insist he just loved that desk. He could take the documents inside, but he'd have to check them in person item by item to avoid any disputes later about missing items. If Jiang Chi insisted on having the desk back, my dad would immediately transform into a heartbroken father-in-law wounded by his son-in-law. With a wounded heart, talk of compensation money or changing houses. Don't even think about it. Naturally, Jiang Chi didn't dare sort through the documents in front of my dad. Forget the diary. Just that lipstick-stained IOU alone, Jiang Chi would rather die than count it out before my father. He also couldn't afford to offend my dad. If my dad really refused to help us change houses, his and Su Wen's plan would be ruined. How would he fill the debt hole then? In the afternoon, Jiang Chi went out again, citing overtime. The moment he left, I went out too. Jiang Chi went to find Su Wen. I went to hire someone to install surveillance cameras. I don't know what Jiang Chi and Su Wen discussed, but after that day, he suddenly transformed into the perfect husband and the model son-in-law. He constantly brought gifts and visited my parents with me, showering my dad with flattery, insisting on admiring his father-in-law's calligraphy. Don't ask. If you ask, it's filial piety. Ask again, and it's a passion for calligraphy. Documents? What documents? Unimportant things aren't worth mentioning. Since he wanted to put on a show, we played along. My parents took turns keeping him company with small talk, discussing everything from calligraphy to traditional painting, from changing houses to having children, anything to prevent him from standing alone by that desk. Jiang Chi was so anxious he developed a cold sore, but he had to keep up the act. Seeing Jiang Chi like this, boiling inside but unable to let it out, filled me with immense satisfaction. The old Jiang Chi was the classic example of biting the hand that feeds. Because my parents had initially opposed our relationship, even after marriage he was reluctant to visit my family with me. Thinking about it, the number of times he visited my home recently probably surpassed a total of the previous 10 years combined. At first, my parents were quite cooperative with my plan to mess with Jiang Chi. But as time went on and Jiang Chi still hadn't given up, it was my dad who grew unwilling first. Ting ting, that's enough. Young Jiang is so anxious he's getting ulcers. Tomorrow afternoon, have someone move that desk of yours back immediately. As soon as Jiang Chi left, my dad scolded me. What's wrong with this? Weren't you really angry that Jiang Chi missed your birthday banquet last time? Consider this as punishment, I said carelessly, sitting on a stool. Sit up straight. My dad slapped the table. I immediately straightened up and placed my hands on my knees. When old Chen got angry, it was no joke. Before you got married, I didn't think much of young Jiang. I was indeed angry he missed the banquet. But Ting Ting, since you chose to marry him, you must respect him. Look at you now, making a fool out of him. Again and again. What kind of wife acts like that? My dad picked up his old teacup and began lecturing me. I had originally planned to keep Jiang Chi's affair from my parents. not wanting them to give anything away before it was time to confront him. But Jiang Chi's recent submissive act had been quite effective. His treatment had already been upgraded from plain boiled water to my dad's treasured Jiang tea. Hearing that Jiang Chi was coming again tomorrow, my mom was already in the kitchen stewing beef. According to her, beef needs to be marinated early, soaking in the brine overnight to absorb the flavor. Listen to that. That level of care. If I didn't come clean soon, my position in my parents' hearts might soon be lower than Jiang Chi's. Jiang Chi is having an affair, I whispered into my dad's ear. Pfft. My dad spat out his tea. What did you say? Jiang Chi is having an affair? As soon as my dad finished speaking, the kitchen door swung open. Who did you just say is having an affair? My mom stood in the kitchen doorway, holding a kitchen knife. My dad and I rushed forward to stop her, afraid she might chop the kitchen door down if we were any later. Then, under my parents' intense gaze, I recounted the entire crime like an elementary school student. No, the entire process of discovering Jiang Chi's affair. Mom, are you still stewing that beef? I haven't had it in ages. Maybe I was too nervous. The words just slipped out. I regretted it as soon as I said it. Your husband has found a mistress, and all you can think about is stewed beef. You look like stewed beef to me. My mom was so angry she kept poking my forehead. Since the secret was out, I simply laid out my entire plan. When Jiang Chi came the next day, he was greeted by an even more enthusiastic father and mother-in-law. The stewed beef was made, of course, but the entire plate was placed right in front of me. The reason? We'd been married 10 years with no children, so my body must be weak and in need of nourishment. Trying for a child requires both husband and wife to nourish themselves, my dad said, pouring Jiang Chi a glass of snake wine. He even placed a bottle in front of Jiang Chi afterwards. Don't be shy. Pour yourself more when you finish. Jiang Chi had always been afraid of snakes. He wouldn't even eat eel or loach, which resembled them. I don't know what he felt staring at the snake in the bottle, but I was certainly enjoying my braised beef. After the meal, my dad dragged Jiang Chi to play ping pong with him. Jiang Chi, having favors to ask, couldn't very well let my dad pick up the balls, could he? And coincidentally, my dad's skills weren't great, so Jiang Chi had to work hard running around. When they returned, Jiang Chi's back was soaked with sweat from exhaustion. My dad, however, gave me a smiling okay sign. Dad, why did you play for so long? You must be tired. As a qualified, warm, caring daughter, I immediately handed my dad a towel, selectively ignoring Jiang Chi beside him. Not tired at all. Young Jiang played very well. My dad nodded at Jiang Chi, looking very appreciative. Oh, right. Young Jiang said his company gave out hot spring tickets. Next week, our whole family should go to the hot springs together. Hot spring tickets? The whole family together? I looked at Jiang Chi with a moved expression. I still have overtime. You and your parents should go, Jiang Chi said after a moment's hesitation. Young Jiang, your mother and I were planning to buy you a house in a good school district. Don't you even have that little bit of time? Here it comes. My dad's housing threat. Arriving late but present. The trick was old but effective. The moment Jiang Chi heard house, he quickly promised to definitely take time off to accompany us. This was exactly the outcome I wanted. Soon, the day for the hot springs arrived. Jiang Chi drove us to the suburban hot springs. The soaking process was very quiet. Jiang Chi was on his phone the entire time. So was I. The surveillance cameras I installed at my parents' house were connected to the internet, allowing remote monitoring. Watching Su Wen appear on the surveillance feed, I smiled. I knew Jiang Chi wouldn't trust anyone else to retrieve the items from that desk. Once he was tied up and couldn't go himself, he would definitely ask the interested party Su Wen to do it. After opening the door, Su Wen didn't linger. She quickly found Jiang Chi's desk. Using the key to unlock it, she froze. Beneath the lipstick-stained IOU was a drawer full of necklaces, rings, earrings, and bracelets. This was a trap I had prepared specially for Su Wen. I wasn't afraid she wouldn't take the bait. Ding dong! Jiang Chi's phone chimed. He looked at the message and smiled happily. Su Wen must have told him everything was taken care of. Watching Su Wen on the monitor sweep clean the jewelry drawer, even looking around hungrily for more, I smiled even wider. The prey had entered the net. On the way back, Jiang Chi abandoned his usual attentiveness from the past few days and put on a proud expression once again. As soon as we got home, Jiang Chi's face changed. Oh no! What a mess! Has our house been burglarized? Then, with a burst of acting skills, he rushed toward the desk. What should I do? There were important company documents in here, and now they're all gone. Jiang Chi hugged the empty drawer and wailed. It's such a pity he doesn't pursue acting with skills like these. Look at how anxious he seems. I almost believed him myself. Should we call the police? I asked, looking at Jiang Chi with feigned sincerity. But Jiang Chi hesitated. The police? Just a few missing documents. That wouldn't meet the threshold for filing a case, would it? His little scheme is quite clever. He even knows about the threshold for filing a case. I immediately shot my mom a look, and she instantly picked up on my cue and began her own performance. Oh no! The gold bracelet Ting Ting bought me is missing. It's worth tens of thousands. As soon as my mom finished speaking, my dad also discovered that his cherished Mutai liquor was gone. Jiang Chi panicked. With that amount of money involved, it wasn't just about filing a case, it was enough to constitute a criminal offense. Don't worry, I patted Jiang Chi reassuringly. We have surveillance cameras at home. We'll definitely find your documents. Under Jiang Kai's horrified gaze, I dialed the police. Hello. I'd like to report a crime. This is apartment X, building X, XX community, XX road. Our home has been burglarized. Knock, knock, knock. Soon after, urgent knocking echoed at the door. The community I lived in had been recognized as a harmonious community for 3 consecutive years. It had probably been a long time since they dealt with a case involving such a large sum of money. After I reported the value of the stolen items as over 300,000 yuans, I could clearly see the young police officer's eyes light up with alertness. He energetically asked if we had surveillance footage. Of course we did. The high-definition camera was pointed directly at the desk, and in the retrieved footage, Su Wen's face was unmistakably clear. Oh my god, isn't that Su Wen? How could she? How could she? I covered my chest, pretending to be shocked. Expressions of surprise, regret, and heartbreak took turns on my face. After all, we were a married couple. If my husband was such a good actor, I couldn't fall behind. Officer, can we withdraw the case? She's my friend, and I don't want her to go to jail, I asked. I advise against that, the officer said solemnly, pointing to the screen. In the corner of the paused footage, a tattooed hand was visible. This could be a gang operation. Fortunately, you and your family weren't home during the burglary. Otherwise, breaking and entering could have escalated into a robbery. Robbery. I slumped into a chair, feigning shock. For a case of this magnitude, giving a statement was mandatory. Throughout the entire process, Jiang Chi seemed distracted, merely nodding in response to every question until the police brought Su Wen in. Xiao Kai. As soon as Su Wen saw Jiang Chi, tears streamed down her face, her expression pitiful and heart-wrenching. Her teary act might work on Jiang Chi, but it had no effect on the police. With the evidence indisputable, Su Wen only had time to utter one sentence before being invited to give her statement. Officer, I'll leave this case in your hands, I said. Please rest assured, maintaining community safety is our duty. We'll notify you as soon as there's any progress in the case. After 2 hours of giving statements, my family and I finally walked out of the police station. I was about to take my parents for a meal when Jiang Chi stirred up trouble again. Ting Ting, I need to talk to you alone, Jiang Chi said, looking at his face. 7 parts stubbornness and 3 parts grievance. One might think I was forcing him into something unsavory. Instantly, I lost my appetite. I took out my phone, booked the nearest hotel, and arranged for my parents to go there first to eat and rest. After my parents left, Jiang Chi and I found an empty flower bed to sit down. What is it? Hurry up and speak, I said. At this point, I couldn't be bothered to show him any kindness. Can you write a letter of understanding for Su Wen? She had her reasons, Jiang Chi said, unable to meet my eyes. What reasons? Reasons to pay off debts or reasons to spend intimate nights with you? I retorted. You knew all along. You did this on purpose. Jiang Chi pointed at me, his eyes wide with panic like a terrified toad. Oh, you figured it out. I covered my mouth with my hand, feigning surprise. Thud. Jiang Chi knelt down and hugged my legs. I know I've wronged you, but Su Wen is innocent. Please save her. If you're willing to help her, I promise I'll never see her again. It was already late at night, and the city's neon lights cast an unreal, colorful glow on Jiang Kai's face. Listening to this classic, brainless, melodramatic line, I suddenly realized that in this love story, if Su Wen was the delicate, suffering heroine, then Jiang Chi was the devoted supporting character. And I, without a doubt, was the most detestable villain in the entire story. Sure, I said, patting Jiang Kai's head gently before slowly revealing a smile. As long as she returns everything she took, without missing a single item. After hearing my response, Jiang Chi sprang to his feet and dashed toward the police station. He must have been eager to share the good news with Su Wen. Of course, I wasn't acting out of kindness or planning to let them off the hook. The reason I did this was because of that hand in the video. Knowing Jiang Chi as I did, it was impossible for him to involve a third person in this. That meant Su Wen had brought someone else without Jiang Chi's knowledge. If I wasn't mistaken, that hand likely belonged to the debt collector. Guess what? Those jewels probably weren't in Su Wen's possession anymore. And what would Jiang Chi do when he realized Su Wen couldn't produce the jewels? That would be quite entertaining. Suddenly, I felt incredibly malicious, as though I had a natural talent for being a villain. I love villains. Villains bring me joy. Hee hee. Not long after, Jiang Chi returned. Unlike his earlier excitement, he now looked as dejected as a stray dog that had been inexplicably beaten up. Ting ting I, either return the items or face jail time. No pleading for leniency. I coldly interrupted him. Jiang Chi hesitated for a moment, torn. I can compensate you on Su Wen's behalf. You? I sneered. Using our joint marital assets. Then what do you want? Seeing that I wouldn't budge, Jiang Chi grew anxious. We get a divorce, and you leave with nothing. I took out the divorce agreement I had prepared earlier from my bag and enunciated each word clearly. At this point, Jiang Chi had no choice but to sign. 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Bring all the necessary documents, and we'll meet at the Civil Affairs Bureau. I took the signed agreement and waved it in my hand. I wasn't foolish. Signing a divorce agreement alone was meaningless. Both parties had to be present for the divorce to be finalized. If he wanted the letter of understanding, he'd have to exchange it for the divorce certificate. The next day, with Jiang Chi's cooperation, we smoothly obtained our divorce certificates. As soon as we stepped out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, Jiang Chi hurried away with the letter of understanding. No need to guess he was undoubtedly rushing to share the good news with Su Wen. Watching Jiang Chi's retreating figure, I couldn't help but shake my head. Freed from the rose-tinted glasses of love, I realized the person I had loved for 10 years was actually this foolish. Did he really think I would let them off so easily? 1 hour? 2 hours? I checked the time, counting down the minutes. Buzz, buzz, buzz. My phone vibrated. I answered, and Jiang Chi's furious cursing erupted from the other end. Having lived with Jiang Chi for so many years, this was the first time I was genuinely shocked by the breadth of his vocabulary. Even though he was hurling insults at me, I wasn't angry at all. If I guessed correctly, the police had just refused to release Su Wen. This wasn't some targeted vendetta, it was purely because this lovebird duo was too foolish. Breaking and entering was a criminal offense. Even if I were willing to issue a letter of understanding for Su Wen, the most she could avoid was civil liability, meaning she wouldn't have to pay compensation. But release? That was impossible. Even without civil liability, there was still criminal liability. Jail time was unavoidable. I've already given up everything in the divorce. Isn't that enough? Jiang Chi's voice was hoarse and desperate over the phone. Of course not, I replied, then hung up. 10 years. Not 10 days. Not 10 months. My best years were wasted on a man who never loved me, and my longtime best friend used me as a tool to compensate her own admirer. One giving up all assets, the other going to jail. How could that possibly be enough? Not even close. Timing it right, I set off to visit Su Wen. Behind the iron bars, Su Wen's pretty face looked weary, with strands of her airy bangs plastered to her forehead. Are you satisfied now? Unlike Jiang Chi's fury, Su Wen seemed despondent. That wasn't a good state. I still needed her cooperation for my next steps. Don't worry, I'm not here to gloat, I said. I'm here to get you out. Since when are you so kind-hearted? Su Wen looked at me with sarcasm. I leaned close to her ear and whispered a single sentence. Su Wen's eyes first lit up, then filled with terror. Shh. I raised a finger to my lips. 2 months later, Jiang Chi was sentenced to 3 years. Su Wen received a 2-year sentence, suspended for 3 years, and I watched everything unfold from the gallery. As the verdict was read, Su Wen wore a smile of relief, having narrowly escaped disaster. Jiang Chi held his head high, and just before being led away, he shouted at me, "You don't understand love. How pitiful." I smiled at him. I couldn't wait to shatter his so-called love. Secrets are like fine wine, they need time to mature and turn sweet. In the 7th month of Jiang Chi's imprisonment, I received what I had been waiting for. Looking at the stack of photos in my hand, I paid the private investigator a handsome fee. Now, it was time to offer the concerned parties a taste of this aged vintage. With my lawyer's help, I applied for a visitation with Jiang Chi. Behind the iron bars, Jiang Chi looked somewhat thinner, but his spirits seemed high. His eyes were unnervingly bright, like those of certain canines in African documentaries. If not for the barrier, I'd have worried he might lunge and bite me. Congratulations. Su Wen gave birth. It's a boy. I smiled and handed him a photo. Jiang Chi took the photo, gazing at it obsessively. The reason Jiang Chi turned himself in and received such a heavy sentence was largely because he took all the blame upon himself. But no matter how willing he was to take the fall for Su Wen, with the surveillance footage as evidence, Su Wen was still going to jail. The only difference would be the length of her sentence, not the fact of it. It was I who reminded Su Wen, for less serious crimes, pregnant women could receive suspended sentences. Why did I wait so long to give them the opportunity to steal? Precisely to wait for this child. The day the private investigator told me Su Wen was pregnant was the day I agreed with my parents to go hot spring bathing with Jiang Chi. Su Wen wasn't the principal offender. She had my letter of understanding, and she was pregnant. Receiving a suspended sentence became almost inevitable. Guess why I helped Su Wen? Out of kindness? My expression must have been terrifying because even my lawyer subtly shifted back in his seat. What are you going to do to Su Wen and the child? If you have any grievances, take it out on me. Don't hurt them. Jiang Chi had probably grown accustomed to my habit of always having a backup plan. Even though he didn't know exactly what was wrong, fear was his instinctive reaction now. Why would I hurt them? I heard you wrote to your parents back home, asking them to come take care of Su Wen. How touching. We were married for so many years, and I never received such care from my in-laws. I sighed with feigned regret. My mom is here to take care of the baby. It's not my fault you couldn't conceive in 10 years of marriage. I've already been more than fair to you. He really had the audacity to sound so righteous. Do you remember when we went to see that specialist at the municipal hospital? That was in our 3rd year of marriage. Since we hadn't had a child, my mother had pulled strings to get us an appointment with a specialist. I was the one who picked up the test results. To protect Jiang Kai's pride, I kept the truth from him. Now, that very medical report was placed in front of Jiang Chi. Infertility. How, then? The baby? Jiang Kai's face flushed red, then turned pale, and finally a purplish hue. You're lying to me, right? Tell me you're lying. Jiang Chi pleaded with his eyes. He desperately wanted me to give him a denial. I looked pityingly at this man on the verge of madness. After a moment's hesitation, I handed him the final photo. In the photo, Su Wen lay shyly in a man's arms. Although the man's face wasn't clear, the tattooed hand resting on Su Wen's waist, I was sure Jiang Chi would recognize it. After all, he'd spent half a diary page venting about this brave warrior. Jiang Chi completely lost his mind. As I walked away, I could still hear his shouts from behind, though they didn't last long before being silenced by the guards. Jiang Chi must have been desperate to ask Su Wen for an explanation, just like I was when I first discovered his betrayal. Pity, Su Wen wouldn't be visiting him anymore. Going to jail wasn't the end of the punishment. I wouldn't allow Jiang Chi to serve his sentence clinging to hope and love. He had to spend those years behind bars tormented by doubt, pain, and regret. Having dealt with Jiang Chi, I had no intention of letting Su Wen off the hook. I had told Jiang Chi I wouldn't harm Su Wen, but I never said others wouldn't. Not long after Jiang Chi sent the letter asking his parents to care for Su Wen, I sent a letter of my own. I don't need to detail its contents. On the very day I visited Jiang Chi, his mother, my former mother-in-law who never missed a holiday to passive-aggressively call me a barren hen, arrived. I have to admit, my former mother-in-law's combat skills were impressive. In the video the private investigator sent me, Su Wen was dragged downstairs naked by my ex-mother-in-law, her pale face covered in scratches. Of course, Su Wen wasn't some delicate little flower. Even weakened from childbirth, she was still young and had strong teeth. When she couldn't fight back, she bit. The clash between the old and the young was spectacular. While most were just watching the spectacle, some kind souls called the police as the fight escalated. The police quickly took both women away. Barring unforeseen circumstances, my former mother-in-law would be detained for a few days, but it wouldn't be serious. Su Wen, however, was different. Public brawling during her probation period was an extremely severe violation. Her suspension would likely be revoked, and she'd probably be sent straight to serve her sentence. As for that brave warrior, a concerned citizen would report him shortly. If fate allowed, he might even meet Jiang Chi in prison. What would happen between them then? Just thinking about it was thrilling. I heard the child was later adopted by a childless middle-aged couple. Perhaps that was for the best, a chance for a clean, unblemished start.